It's a multi-stage process. We'll often measure what's happening in different areas. For example, when the first contact's made with the receptionist, what does she do with the call? Does she write it on a piece of notepaper? So we actually track right the way through and and essentially measure it, and I put it into a process map, and that gives me some analysis of what's happening and how long things are taking and who's touching what part. And then I remap the process in accordance with the business and who they've got there as far as the ideal scenario. So it's that whole side of implementation, analysis to make sure we're actually moving. And then that comes into financial performance as well, because ideally all of this has got to translate to bottom line profits and time for the business owners. Probably the main challenges that I encounter are people's, I guess, resistance to external help. A lot of the companies I work with have got to a point of chaos. So they've grown from the one person right through to, it might be 5 or 10 people. One case I'm working with 100. And so they get to a point of saying, well, our systems aren't working, our processes are letting us down, we've got double touches here, we've got waste. At that point, they see their need for external help. The other thing I find too is the people who want to be at the top of their game are really open to external advice. And they're the people I love working with, bringing order out of chaos and elite performers, people who want to be at the top of their game in their industry. So. Where do I start? I mean that. I love the system. The fact that it streamlines everything from initial client contact right through to the payment of their bill and every step in between, and then the follow-up system is very, very good. Oftentimes I've found companies, there'll be 5 people touching the one stage, so having Simpro just really helps streamline that, and that's where people in relation to process is really important as well. Give it 6 to 12 months, especially if you're using enterprise. Get as much training as possible. I've got a number of firms that will go for days training here and there just to make sure they're on track with it. And also the comments back from some of the people who have gone to the training say, they've reduced 5 steps down to 1, or we didn't know that saves me 10 minutes every time I click a button. So yeah, very, very valuable. I recently posted a case study to Simpro, and we've been able to take, essentially from memory, from initial customer contact right through to the payment of their bill, the internal process time we mapped at the start of when I started working with them was 143 minutes per job for all the internal process time. It didn't relate to the job, but just the internal work. So we reduced that, again, this is going from memory, down to 60 minutes. Right? So it saved 83 minutes per job. When you actually multiplied that by the numbers of jobs per week, it was 51 hours. So essentially it was a staff person. And then when we actually brought in directors' times and staff times, we estimated about $200,000 worth of savings when you actually see the value that directors and different people bring to the organisation in terms of profitability and revenue. It's quite significant. I think that I could probably say a couple of benefits, key benefits. This might spill into more because there's obviously so many. But being able to have a system like Simpro that takes the initial call, to creating the client, to the quote, to the job, to the invoice, and there's other steps obviously there, but getting that nice streamlined process is just massive from a time point. There's no lost paper, there's no lost quotes. So that's huge. Everything gets entered, so you recoup the price of Simpro very, very quickly. In many cases I come across. You don't have, in the guys that are using the iPads or pens or whatever, filling out job cards, you don't have job cards flying out of the ute or arriving back 7 days later. You can invoice straight away, so cash conversion cycle reduces massively. And I think the other thing that I use Simpro a lot for is the analysis of the business. So the reporting on Simpro's sensational. Just a final note from external advice. In the Fast 100 magazine from BRW back in 2010, one of the notable indicators for the people featured there, the businesses featured there, was that 88% of them used external advice to their business by way of coaches, mentors, consultants, or external boards. And I always remember, this may not be the greatest example now, but when Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, they said he had, some said he had the perfect swing, but he still had a swing coach. And so when I looked at that and the Fast 100, it was a realization that the people who want to be at the top of their game utilize external advice. And so my encouragement to everyone, I have a guy in the US who mentors me, because I'm like every other business owner. I get too close to my own cold face in my business. So external advice, and even with the use of Simpro, being able to have a watchful eye to track process and map it and analyze results against the original baseline is just essential. I've had coaching and mentoring myself for 12 years, so I wouldn't be without it.